How's it going, everybody? Bryan, Alvarez, and Dave Meltzer here. Wrestling Observer Radio, September 5, 2019. Figure4online.com/WrestlingObserver.com. Got some technical difficulties here on my end. No internet at my house. So Dave is doing the show via phone today. And we've also got difficulties at Dave's house. Observer's not quite done yet, but early Thursday. Is that what it's looking like?
Yeah, I'm just working on the final story. Just writing the AEW story right now. So it's just too much. There was just too much to watch. And if there was no news that broke today, I think I probably could have got it done. But, the idea that there was going to be no news breaking on a Wednesday was pretty much, I knew that was probably unlikely, especially with the news that I was kind of been expecting for a couple of days. So, the writing change and everything with WWE and just some other stuff. And I also spent a lot of time on a story on Norman Frederick Charles, which I didn't realize that he had passed away. And he was a pretty major star in the 70s. So that was another story that kind of, put me back. So I had to watch three different shows on television coming back from that trip. And, they were long, they were fairly lengthy shows.
Well, we'll get into all of this here, but let's start with the WWE writer shakeup. We've got new names in, names out. What's going on?
Yeah, so essentially, there's a lot to this story, but it's really hard to, part of the stuff is that, the Smackdown situation has been what it is every week. Like this week, so what happened this week was Vince pretty much wrote the show Monday night and Tuesday. So that was the show that you saw. And there was probably going to be a scapegoat. Ryan Ward asked for time off, so that ended up happening as well. So Ryan Ward's out. And Ed Koskey, who's been the lead writer for Raw for a long time, he's been with the company forever. He was Heyman's lead writer, so he's moving to SmackDown to be the lead writer for Bischoff. And then Heyman's new lead writer is going to be Jonathan Bakestrom, who had been the lead writer of 205 Live for, almost 3 years. So, and Heyman has been using him a lot more on Raw, so he actually has kind of not been writing 205 Live for the last, month or so, whatever the time frame is, 6 weeks. And so Chad Barbish has been the lead writer of 205 Live, and he will be, but he was unofficial. Now he's official. So that's the shakeup. That's part of all the shakeups. They're going to, the writing crews apparently are going to be not, there's going to be there's always been sort of a Raw crew and a SmackDown crew, but it's all interchangeable because the talent's interchangeable. It's like, how can you have an exclusive writing team when your talent is on the other show? It makes no sense. You have to be able to, whether it's protect your talent or work. The storylines are going on both shows. It's not like there's a storyline on Raw and then you go on SmackDown and it's a different universe and the storyline doesn't count. So obviously there's going to be cross-pollination. There has to be the nature of how everything is now. But come October, the idea is there will be no more of that everyone's going to be exclusive. The writing teams are going to be exclusive. The announcing teams are going to be exclusive. The talent is going to be exclusive. So the idea is the talent lineup that they did in the last draft is kind of going to be the talent lineup, but there's going to be some changes, and so those changes are, and they may include some NXT people. But the changes are going to be made with yet another draft, which will be on, let me get the dates. I think it's October the 11th in Vegas, which would be the second show on Fox. So the idea is that everyone knows Fox is going to start off with a big number because they're bringing in Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin, and they're going to have a Brock Lesnar on the show. It's going to be another one. That's the formula, of how to draw a big rating now, because there's no hot angles, there's no hot matches or anything that's going to do it anymore. your two things are the day after WrestleMania, which you can't do in October, and a draft, and the other one is to bring back all the old stars, which will be the third time this year they've done that, which I think is kind of overkill, but it is what it is.
All right, so let me jump in for a second. I mean this in the nicest way possible, but does Vince think for like 2 seconds before he makes any of these decisions?
In what sense?
So, we had a draft.
Yes.
And we had Raw talent and we had Smackdown talent.
Yes.
And in the middle of the summer, with no football competition whatsoever, things were so bad that they started just doing this wild card thing and putting everybody on every show.
Yeah, because ratings,
so now
ratings. Hey, look, remember, ratings were collapsing before they did that. They had to.
That's my point. So now they're going to go head to head with football on Monday nights, and his plan is
next Monday's the first week. Now I think normally that's like a lot of people think. Oh, now the rating is going to collapse and or go down. Collapse is probably not a word, but 10% drop is expected. I don't expect it this week because I think that the Madison Square Garden means a little bit. First TV in Madison Square Garden in a decade. It means a little bit, but it's not. That's not going to save.
I would say virtually nothing.
Yeah, but Steve Austin coming back always draws, and so I think that will. I don't think that it will draw at the level it did. I mean, I remember when he came back, and it was like a half of a ratings point difference. I mean, we're not going from 1.7 to 2.2. No, I don't buy that at all. But I do think he'll be more than enough to offset the first week of Monday Night Football. But you can only, there's only so much hot-shotting you can do.
Well, getting back to my point, so you're now going to be going head-to-head with football.
Yes.
And so now his new plan is, we're going to... I mean, the front-page article said something like they're going to be freshening up the rosters. It's like, freshen up the rosters by cutting them in half. No more wild card. No more guys going show to show. We're back to exclusive Raw and SmackDown brands. Win going head-to-head with football. That's the plan?
That's the plan for now. Look, hey, the plan can always change. It always does, every single week. But that's the plan right now, yeah, to do that with the draft and so they can reshuffle the rosters. Heyman can get a couple of guys he wants. Bischoff, if he knows who the people are on the roster, maybe he can figure out who he wants. I don't know. It's been one of the running jokes that doesn't even know who the talent is yet. But there you go.
So they've shaken up the writing crew, and the great irony is that the big story is the shaking up of the writing crew, and meanwhile, Chris Jericho's championship belt vanishes. And
one thing, and we haven't really talked.
Well, hold on, let me continue with this.
Okay.
With no writers, he crafts his own storyline, and it's all people have been talking about for days now. He's selling all these bubbly shirts on Pro Wrestling Tees, the most requested shirt ever. I mean, talk about exposing the fact that you don't need a writing team if you know what you're doing.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one thing as far as Wednesday goes is it's going to be a heavily scripted show versus a show with no writers. I mean, legitimately, they are not hiring writers.
Great.
And we're going to see a live 2-hour show with no writers, just wrestlers with story, coming up with storylines and going out there and having to cut promos and, knowing their bullet points. And they want to memorize their promos, they can. And if they don't want to memorize their promos, they don't have to. But there's not going to be any word-for-word stuff. And by the way, on Raw this week, several of the promos, several of the promos were not scripted word for word, so that, which is interesting. But, it's funny, they may be copying or whatever. Let's face it, a lot of the scripted promos, we've all complained about them forever for the obvious reasons. They're badly delivered and lifeless and all that. So we're going to a new era or a new concept, and we'll see if pro wrestling needs script writers to be effective television, and among other things. I mean, the jury's not out on a million different things when it comes to AEW. But there are going to be a lot of answers, or preliminary answers.
Well, listen, I don't know how successful AEW is going to be. No one knows, but I can tell you that the history of wrestling all over the world tells us that wrestling can, in fact, be successful without scriptwriters.
New Japan doesn't have scriptwriters.
No. I don't think I've ever heard of an ROH script.
I mean, they have scripts, but I don't think they write I don't know about the writing word for word on promos, but, everyone has, well, I don't know if scripts is the right word. Everybody has television formats.
Sure.
But as far as scripts, I don't know that, does anyone have scripts other than WWE?
Well, Impact did.
Yeah, they did. They did. I don't know if they still do, but there was a point where they did. Yeah, but I don't think those scripts were nearly so rigid, though.
Well, it was just when Russo was putting the scripts together, we had very rigid scripts.
Yeah, you could always tell, especially with women. They, there was a fingerprint on those scripts. Yeah.
Well, at least we can report here that Vince Russo is not coming out of the WWE writing team. That's good news.
Vince Russo is not coming on the WWE writing team. No.
Excellent.
No.
Excellent.
Not
news.
at all.
All right.
Who knows? Who knows? Hey, here's the thing. Look, what if everything goes down? Look, would you ever think that Vince would hire some of the people that he hired this year? So I don't put anything past him. You got to remember that for whatever reason, he hired Bruce Pritchard because he's comfortable with Bruce Pritchard, and Bruce Pritchard, I think he needed reassurance, and if you want reassurance and you want someone telling you everything you do is great, Bruce Pritchard's a very entertaining guy to do that. He's a great, he's super entertaining. As far as value in 2019 to a new television show, God only knows. Bischoff, I'm still at a loss for words on Bischoff, but, again, I think some of that was for stockholders, but even so, it's you can buffalo stockholders to a degree, but, at the end of the day, you still got to be able to perform, and there's been a lot of problems on that end right now, but, we'll see how this all plays out. There's a lot of pressure. I think there's a lot more pressure on the SmackDown side, obviously, than there's going to be. SmackDown and NXT are both going to have pressure because NXT is going head-to-head, and SmackDown has to do well. Raw's going to do well. What else on USA is going to do better on Monday night? They're never going to cancel it. You don't say never, but they'd have to crater horribly. This would have to be like WCW bad, and they're nowhere close to that on Raw. It'd have to be WCW bad, and even then, it's going to take 5 years before they're because they're guaranteed that spot and that money. But the Friday, if all goes wrong, and Friday's a flop, that's a big blow to the company. It's going to be a big blow to the stock. I don't expect it to happen. I don't expect them to move them. But, I also can't say that there's no possibility of it. But there's absolute pressure. You're not on network TV without pressure for ratings, especially as a marginal product, because it's not like, put it this way, we know they're not going to go in there after the first couple of weeks. The first couple of weeks may be very big. But after that, we know they're not going to do monster ratings on Friday night. We know that. The idea is, are they just going to do horrible numbers? And when I look at some of the numbers that a lot of the Fox shows do, and like the sports that they have on Saturday nights when it's not college football, when it's like the PBC stuff. Those numbers are a lot of the PBC stuff took the place of the old UFC Saturday nights. And they're doing 1 million, just over 1 million viewers, and SmackDown is not doing just over 1 million viewers, no way, shape, or form on Friday nights. It could do low twos in a year. Could it do under 2? Maybe. Maybe not. But it's not doing under 2 anytime soon. And that's, is it what they paid all that money for? No. But, things changed since they paid all that money. I don't expect 3.5 million viewers in a boom period every week. But, I don't expect it to flop either.
All right, we're back here on the show, everybody. We've got the internet issues all squared away, so Dave is back here sounding good. And let's get into the Smackdown report. What did you think of the show?
I thought it was good. You know, it was the King of the Ring matches were. Ali and Elias was a lot better than I expected. Actually, I thought it was a hell of a match. I thought it was the best Elias match I've seen. Ali's always good.
God, between Elias and Corbin, what a week.
Yeah, they both had good matches. And then Chad Gable and Shelton Benjamin had about as good a match as they were going to have, given the time they were given. Or, I mean, Andrade, I should say.
Andrade.
Shelton.
But Shelton had a good match, too.
Well, it was a 2-minute match with Aleister Black.
Yeah, but it was a fun 2-minute match.
It was fine, yeah. But Gable, you know, they're giving Gable this big push while doing the shorty thing and having him almost cry. I don't know about this. I mean, people are going to get behind it, but are they going to really take him seriously as a top guy doing this routine? I mean, it doesn't really matter anyway. I mean, it's different. It's a different era. So, you know, they're giving him a push. I was surprised. I didn't expect him to beat Andrade. So it's Gable and Elias. And I don't know. I don't really see any reason that Elias should go to the finals. I just don't see it. It doesn't, you know. I mean, even though Elias had a really good match this week, the reality is that 8 times out of 10, when Elias does a match on television, people tune out. They just, you know, zong out. You know, they just go quiet. I mean, people want to see Elias. I think they think he's a star. Kind of like The Miz in a lot of ways. Although Miz is a better wrestler, except at certain things. I don't want to, after watching those punches, I almost feel like, how can I say that? But he is. But I think that, you know, if you got Gable and Elias, God, I think Gable should go to the finals. Does that mean he wins? On the other end, we got 3 guys, you know, Joe. And the fact that Joe confronted Gable was certainly a tease to make you think Joe could win. Corbin, you know, obviously.
Not even that he could win. Well, I mean, they could face each other in the finals.
They could face each other in the finals, yeah. And then either guy could win, but whatever. And then the other one, because a lot of people are, you know, I know that there are people in power who are very high on Joe. Although I don't think that Joe needs to win King of the Ring, because Joe's such a good talker and, you know, people believe he's a badass and he can lose and, you know, stay somewhat strong. You know, I mean, I know that when I say, you know, lose and stay strong, and that becomes the excuse to beat him all the time, then they somehow don't stay strong, and then they wonder why. You know, but, you know, with Corbin, I mean, you got the size difference. I mean, if you want to put Gable as this, you know, big underdog, you know, size-wise, visually, you know, Corbin's the guy. It's a riskier match, but Gable's so great, I don't know how much of a risk it really is. And then I don't see doing Gable and Ricochet, but it'd probably be unbelievable if you did. So there's always a chance of that. So, you know, yeah. It's kind of the status of King of the Ring. So they announced Roman Reigns and Rowan, not Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan, which was the match that was listed a week ago. But when I watched, because I actually asked, and I was like, okay, so is this like a red herring and it's going to end up being Daniel Bryan next week? And it was like, well, the only person who knows is Vince. And so nobody knows. So
it could be anybody.
Yeah, but the way the angle went, I mean, I watched the show knowing all this, and I felt that it's Rowan because I thought that the angle was strong. You know, you know what I mean? It's like
I thought that Rowan did a fine performance, and I thought that what they did was a fine job setting up the match. But the storyline is ridiculous.
Well, yeah, because it's probably been changed 18 times. You know,
I mean, dude, they showed the footage this week of the Rowan guy creeping out in the back of that footage of the stuff tipping over.
Whatever happened to him? What happened to the other Rowan guy?
Dude, forget the other Rowan guy. Rowan walked out after the stuff tipped over from the other side. So who tipped over all of the stuff?
Maybe it's going to be Daniel Bryan after all. I mean, maybe it gets revealed next week.
So part of Bryan's plan was for Rowan to give him a claw chokeslam through the damn table? That's part of his plan?
All I could tell you is...
They did hire Russo.
Okay, all I could tell you is when this thing is done, I am certain that we will look back and it makes absolutely no sense.
It makes no sense now.
I know. I know, and I don't think that they're going to, I don't see some magical way they're going to tie it in. Yeah, look, when you have a story and you're a writer and it changes every single week, at the end, you're going to find lots of holes in it. And it's changed. Look, we know it's changed every single week.
I love the way that you worded that. When you have a story and you're the writer and it changes every week.
Yeah, but
you're a shitty writer. I realize that Vince is coming up with these stupid ideas and have to write around them, but
no, but the writers idea, you can't blame the writers for this. The writers, look, I know the whole, look back at the WrestleMania main event.
We need a new word for these people and not writers. Can we come up with a better word?
They're writers.
They're writers, but I mean, come on. When you hear writers, you think about, well, these are the people that are putting the story together. That's what a writer does. But that's not their job. Someone else comes up with the story and then tells them what the story is for that day, and they have to write some stuff. And then the next week, they got to write some other stuff. I guess they're writers, but it's just...
They're writers. They're not the director. The director is Vince or Paul Heyman or whoever, or Bischoff or whatever. I mean, I don't even know if that's even the right term. There's something. Vince is the producer of the show. Vince is the showrunner. Vince is everything, and the other guys work for Vince, and they're there to facilitate Vince. And Vince obviously believes that stories don't have to make sense. I mean, I think we've established that for years now. So it's
all he does is yell at the announcers to tell stories. All he does is talk about how we tell stories, but he doesn't actually care about stories.
Oh, he cares about stories. Just they don't. I don't think that. I think that they have the feeling that look, they've been doing this for years and years and years, and they lose.
And
audience,
we're dumb.
But no, it's not even that the people are dumb. They may think that too, but because there's a lot of arrogance, but it's not that. It's just that they feel that, look, I mean, I've had discussions with people in wrestling for, decades, and there's two types. There's the types that absolutely, feel that we can't insult the intelligence of our audience, and they're the minority. We can't insult the intelligence of the minority. Our stuff has to make sense. We have to lose logic and all this. And most of them are out there just going like, whatever we do, they'll buy it. I mean, I remember the line once when it was like, there was some story that made absolutely no sense. And this is in the 80s when, people had grown up with wrestling that made sense, and now it was starting to not make sense. And I remember someone going to me and goes, if the fans need to make sense, they'll come up with their own reason. I was like, okay.
Well, you know what? That happens.
I
hear it every day.
I will also grant you that the person who told me that, his company, when he was running a company, his company did, in fact, go out of business very quickly.
Well, how about that?
Yeah.
You know how many people have told me and explained to me the stupid Rowan storyline because they've made it up in their own head?
I don't even worry about it because it's like I know that when it comes, when it comes to long-term storylines when Vince is involved, it can't because it's just the nature of it. How do you tear up a show the afternoon of the show and then have the show make sense to what happened last week and build where you were planning on going next week? It's impossible. So it's just what we get.
How do you come up with a fake Rowan and not even write the fake Rowan out of the storyline? Like he was in a room with all these guys.
I don't know.
They went off the air. We never heard about it again.
I don't know if he's ever coming back or he's just something that we're supposed to forget. I don't know. I don't even ask about this stuff because, you know what? Even if I asked and I was told, the reality is a week later, none of it would matter anyway. So what does it even matter? You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't even know Roman Reigns' match for the pay-per-view. I know it was always, look, the last pay-per-view was supposed to be Daniel Bryan. Then it was like, well, we can't rush it. Then this pay-per-view was supposed, yeah, well, they didn't want to rush it. So even though it was SummerSlam.
They solved that problem.
So then it was going to be on this show. And now I have no idea if it's going to be on this show or not. I think it's not. I mean, I watched that angle and it's like, to me, when that angle was over, it's like, I don't think they're going to do Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan because they'd have to do it for next week, all on next week's show, and they have to make sense out of it, or not make sense out of it, but they have to do it on next week's show. And that's too short of a build again. So, yeah, whatever. I guess we'll find out next week. I mean, the idea, it is Madison Square Garden. And the idea is, for loaded shows. It's really interesting bringing Undertaker back. It's like, I don't even know why. Why do you need to bring Undertaker back when it's like you're bringing everyone back for that show on October the 4th, other than the fact that, I know that, like, the idea is because...
Well, maybe he's coming back because they're going to set up a match for him on that show.
I was told that that's not the case. I thought that myself, and I was told no. He's going to be on this show, and, it's... Basically, the gist is that he was going to be on the show because they hoped that he would help sell tickets on the second show, because they thought the first show was going to be an easy sell and the second show was going to need help. I don't think either show's selling out, based on the numbers that I've seen. They'd take a hell of a walk up for the Raw to sell out, and there's no way the SmackDown's selling out. So, I'm sure there's a time, like a month ago or 2 months ago, where if you told me that they were going to return and do Raw in Madison Square Garden for the first time in 10 years, and then you would tell me that it's not going to sell out and Steve Austin's going to be on the show, I would say, come on, it ain't going to be that bad. Now, granted, having said that, a lot of this is also the pricing. It's not just like that people aren't buying tickets. Usually the pricing is not a factor when it comes to tickets, as we've seen over and over and over again. But there's always a point where you get out of control, and like when it's whatever it is, like $700 for tickets or something like that to get a good seat. And I'm not exaggerating. There's all kinds of seats on the floor that were at least originally priced. They may have been come down. The whole ticket industry. Anyone who's been following the freaking ticket industry, it's really bad right now. That's one of the, in the long run, I don't think this is going to be good for any of these companies, because, I think that, like the hardcores will always buy and the hardcores will always whatever, but the average person is not going to want to be in a situation where they have to open 6 browsers at once, to get tickets, or, things crash or they're overpriced. And then if they buy tickets early for $300, the guy sitting next to him paid $18 for the same seats. It's not, in the long run, this is not a thing that's going to build up a lot of consumers. And, but everyone's after that quick buck, like of the most loyal fans who want the tickets first will pay the inflated prices. But sooner or later, they're going to figure out that I'm paying ridiculous prices, and then they're not going to buy right away. And then they're going to have to regroup and figure out what they're going to do. So, that's another thing. It's another aspect of the future of this little thing.
All right, take us through these ratings.
Well, there's only ratings. Well, I guess there was the ratings to the AEW show too. I don't really read too much into the AEW stuff. The only thing that I would say is, for people who thought that they were going to flop, they're not going to flop. They did 390,000 viewers with no publicity on a Friday night at 10 o'clock with a collection of clips that we're all seeing on the internet already. So, it's not like it's a great number or anything, but to me, it was more than I expected. It was more than a UFC Countdown show does. And I think that, I think that they're going to go in there. My feeling on what they're going to do is much higher than the feeling was, 2 days ago. So,
what's your feeling?
Minimum 8, don't you think?
My prediction has been 850 to 1.2.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair range. But before, look, it could have been 6. And I don't think it ain't going to be 6. I think minimum 8. Even with the competition head-to-head, I think minimum 8. And maybe more. Maybe a lot more. Who knows? But, whatever the number is, given what the industry predictions were, which was 5, that would tell me that they're handily beating the industry predictions of what they were going to do. And, now, do they maintain? Who knows? That's the quality of the show. That's a million different factors. We haven't even seen a show yet. We don't even know what they're going to, be, because it's not going to be what they're doing on pay-per-view. That's not going to be what their product is, just because they can't. Even though they're going to be as risque as they can be, you aren't going to see matches like that Jimmy Havoc match. And I don't think you're going to be seeing matches like the ladder match either. Hopefully you'll be seeing lots of matches like the Kenny Omega match, but I don't know if that's possible. I mean, I'm sure that would be the goal, to have matches like that, like Kenny Omega and Pac, but that's those, you have to have really good wrestlers to pull that off and everything. I think the kind of matches that, you could have constantly are like that pay-per-view opener with the, Luchasaurus and Marco and Dragon, Jungle Boy against SCU. I thought that was like, because I watched the show back and everything, and I mean that match was really fun live. But when I watched it back, that match was to me the perfect pay-per-view opener. It was from start to finish. It was fun. The crowd loved it. Those SCU guys are a great opening act. I mean, and they'd be a great, semi-main event act too, or something. The Scorpio Sky is so underrated. Frankie Kazarian is like so underrated as well. Christopher Daniels is, super, super smart when it comes to putting together a match and knows what he's doing, and he's a great wrestler, especially in a trios match. And, they made that frickin' Luchasaurus look like frickin', the number one contender of the world championship. I mean, you look at the reaction that he got and his look and his size and that mask and all those cool things he did. And you go like, man, he could, not right away, but he could be like a superstar. That's how good he looked in that match. And Jungle Boy's going to be a superstar. I mean, I always thought he would do well. And every time I see him, I'm like more and more impressed. He gets better. Gets better so quickly. And, Marco Stunt, I know there's going to be people who don't like him because of his size, but that's also why he gets over.
What do you want him to do? Grow? Seriously, what do you want the guy to do?
Well, there's going to be people who either want him to be in the minis division or not in pro wrestling because he's.
They don't have a minis division.
I know. I'm just saying. But there's people who think he shouldn't be in pro wrestling, and let's face it. If it was 20 years ago, nope, not a prayer. I mean, Jungle Boy wouldn't even be in 20 years ago.
There's a lot of guys that wouldn't be in 20 years ago.
Yeah, like half of what we got. It's just a different industry. I mean, but that's and if you want the old industry, then it's not good. But it's not the old industry, and it's evolved and it's changed, and some people will say that, well, the old industry is more popular, and in a sense it was, but there's so many different factors, to it. It's just different. I mean, the thing is like that. UFC changed what this business is, and people have to understand that too. And it's not UFC in 1993; it's UFC in 2005. Once 2005 came, everything was different, because when people start going like, well, it's got to look like a realistic fight. It's like once 2005 came and people saw realistic fights on TV every single weekend, or could if they wanted to. Nothing in pro wrestling, nobody approaches what a realistic fight looks like. So now that's out the window. So now it's got to be entertainment. It's got to be, I mean, you can make it very, very serious. You can make matches dramatic as all hell. You can, and many of them are. But the idea that you have to convince people it's real, I mean, that's, I don't think that you should want to slap them in the face. And a lot of guys do that, and I'm not in favor of that. But the idea that, what's wrong with wrestling is people don't think it's real. It's like they never did, and now you can't. They got real if that's what they want. So what you want is you're the Harlem Globetrotters. You're not the Golden State Warriors, and that's fine. That's what you're going to have to be, because you can't be the Golden State Warriors. You don't have, you're not real. You can't be the Golden State Warriors. Now, you can have guys really famous, but, and that's marketing stars. And, we got two companies now that both have to do it, and we'll see how, that's again, with AEW, it's one of the things, that's one of their challenges, marketing stars past a certain level. And they couldn't do it without television. It's impossible. no matter what you think of social media, it's impossible to get past a certain thing without television yet. Will television help them get there? God only knows. I mean, that's one of the things we're going to watch and see.
All right, it's got some new matches to announce.
So we haven't talked about the ratings yet. Raw was 2,507,000 viewers for Labor Day, which is a number that I think is, overall, I would call it good. It did have a big third-hour drop, so that's not the best. The last two matches did not do well. The Becky Lynch and Bayley against Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss, and the Cesaro Miz match. But they had a great first hour. Overall, the number was good for Labor Day. It's down 12-13% from last year, which, I mean, I would want to be down 8%. I think that would be like a goal. So they're still down a little bit more than that. But, it was against Notre Dame football. It was Labor Day. There's reasons to say that this number was fine. Maybe a little bit better than I expected. But, it's nothing's going to turn around instantly anyway. I mean, you can hotshot for a week and turn it around, but you want look. It's still 2.5 million, and they were a lot lower than that. Not all that long ago, and they're better. They're going into football at a better clip than they would have a couple months ago. Where with as dull, I guess is the word, or whatever the show was, as much as the show before used to drag, because God knows I watch that every week, and I would always complain about dragging, and I don't complain about it as much now. I mean, there's still problems with it, but the dragging, it doesn't drag nearly as much. If it dragged like it did, and it was down 25% a week, and then you were going into football season, it would really, they had to make those moves, because they were going in the direction of really sucking bad, and now they're, doing better.
All right, so some matches to announce. The debut of NXT on the USA Network. We've got Velveteen Dream versus Roderick Strong for the North American title. This is the September 18th show.
Yeah, we knew that one. I mean, that was pretty obvious. And then, yeah.
In a three-way, Mia Yim, Bianca Belair, Io Shirai facing off to determine who will challenge Shayna Baszler for the NXT Women's title.
So, you figure that match is on the third show, not the second show?
As far as like when they're going to do the match with the winner facing Shayna?
Yeah.
I would say, probably on the head-to-head show.
Yeah. It's interesting because Io Shirai's a heel, and the other two, Mia Yim had a bad match with Shayna, and Bianca Belair had an okay match with Shayna. Io Shirai would have a fantastic match with Shayna, but it's heel versus heel.
May I ask a question?
You can always ask a question.
Why did they shoot an angle where Rhea Ripley debuted, and the crowd went absolutely batshit crazy for her,
and she's not in this match?
And she's not in this match.
You are asking the wrong person, because believe me, I thought the same thing.
When I saw Rhea Ripley come out,
yeah, they went crazy. It was great.
I thought what they need to do they need to set up that match to go head-to-head with whatever show AEW is crowning their women's champion, and Rhea Ripley wins.
That's the first show. Well, they maybe they're saving that match for TakeOver Chicago, because that's coming up pretty soon. So maybe that's the TakeOver match, and then this is something that they're doing, a title match that they're going to do before the big match with Rhea Ripley. In fact, I would guess that's what the case is. I mean, that makes the most sense.
Well, actually, what makes the most sense is for her to be in this match, but they're not doing that.
Well, like they're saving it for the pay-per-view, or the big show. So it does make sense. You don't necessarily need to throw everything on television when you're trying to still build big shows. You're still doing the big show concept. So it does make sense in that sense. But yeah, in another sense, if you're having a match to determine the number one contender and you've just shot that angle, Yeah, she should be in this match. It's hard. Like, if it's in the multiple person match, maybe she goes in the 3-way and she gets taken out by nefarious means, and then she gets her singles match later, not earlier. But she at least should be in the first match, yes. And that one, yeah, you can't really make sense out of her not being in the first match, other than the idea of we don't want to hurt her first. But that doesn't make any sense when you've already shot the angle. Then you should shoot the angle after all this goes down, rather than before. So, yep.
And we've got the Omega Moxley match official for the next AEW pay-per-view.
So you think they're going to sell out first day?
I don't know about first day, but I think they're selling out for sure.
Okay, because...
I mean, they got a month of TV.
Yeah, well, I mean, what the TV means... Because, WWE just ran Baltimore Monday night, and, they didn't come close to... They didn't come close... They tarped off, a ton of the building. So, and it's not a big building either. So, of course, but WWE will do better in Chicago that week than AEW will, I'm pretty sure. Because WWE's got 4 shows in Chicago, AEW's got 1, and all 4 shows are selling well. AEW, it's too early to really... I don't say it's too early to say. I mean, they didn't sell out instantly. They're at 4,000 tickets, maybe, probably about 4. And they'll do, in that building in the Sears Center, with weeks of TV and everything like that. They'll do fine, but it's not like they went in there after that big sellout the first time, in this last show, and then came right back and sold out again. But it's hard. It's a Wednesday. It's, after 4 WWE shows, it's the night before Thanksgiving. It's coming back to the market real quick. So, there's all those things that are factors. But, again, it's all part of a big, each individual show and ticket sales and all that, they're part of the story. But it's just the beginning of the story. It's not the, it's the beginning of the story, but it's the biggest story we've had in wrestling in years.
Well, the second biggest story we've had in wrestling in years is the saga of Chris Jericho's missing AEW championship belt.
It's been returned.
It has. Well, I guess it's been returned.
Somebody
took it to the police station, said they found it on the side of the road.
How does that happen?
How does any of this happen?
I don't know. So what happened? Somebody stole it and then threw it out the window?
So they had a flight to Florida, I guess. And it was diverted to Tallahassee.
Okay, so he was trying to go to Tampa, Orlando, right?
Yes.
Where he lives. Okay.
So they were heading wherever. It got diverted to Tallahassee.
Okay.
And they were going to take a limo back to Orlando or wherever they were going.
Because Jericho just bought a mansion. I'm just trying to remember where he bought it. God, I don't remember anymore. I don't remember if it's... I think it's... I should know. I think that's close... I don't know if it's closer to Tampa or Orlando, but it doesn't really matter for the story anyway. It's Tampa or Orlando. It's somewhere in there. It's one of those 2 cities.
They were heading to Tampa.
Okay, it is Tampa?
Tampa. Right. I can confirm Tampa.
Okay.
So they're in the limo, they're heading to Tampa, and they pull off at the now famous Longhorn Steakhouse.
I wonder how the food is there.
I don't know.
We should go.
I'll go to any steakhouse. So
the problem is I have no idea when we're ever going to go to Tallahassee.
I'm sure the day will come. It always does.
Why don't we go to the Cattleman's Steakhouse in Livermore?
Works for me.
Okay, we'll do that, because I ate there like 2 weeks ago. Freaking awesome. Like, just awesome. Like, the best steak I'd had in a long, long time.
Wow.
And I don't really eat...
And you don't eat steak.
I do with you.
That's pretty much the only time. So you cheated on me.
I guess I did. I was out with other friends. I'm sorry.
Oh, my God.
I'm so sorry. I was out with my high school friends, and they wanted to go to Cattleman's, and I said,
disgusted.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry you busted me. I need to keep my mouth shut. Sorry. Okay.
So they pull off at the Longhorn Steakhouse. So Jericho apparently had whatever case the belt goes in. It wasn't like packed in his luggage or anything like that. Like he was carrying it with him the whole time.
So he didn't check it in.
It was not checked luggage.
Okay.
So he's got the case with the belt or whatever.
Isn't that like? I mean, I guess you always do that because I remember I always hear guys when they have the belts, they always go through customs with the belts, and then all the customs people want to take pictures with them and everything. I always thought, check it in, but then again,
dude, this is a $30,000 belt.
Yeah, I know.
This is not something you throw into your checked luggage.
I know how that goes, and I know like I've heard too many horror stories of when the bags get lost, including mine. It's happened before, so yeah, I get it.
So they go into the steakhouse, and Jericho, I guess, leaves the belt in the back of the limo. Mm-hmm. And the limo driver, apparently somebody had picked up a piece of luggage that didn't belong to any of them. So the limo driver had to drive that piece of luggage back to the airport. Mm-hmm. So the limo driver drives to the airport, then he drives back, and apparently he just says, "The belt is gone."
Mm-hmm.
What?
Man, I don't know.
So they're like, well, the belt's gone. And then that's when Jericho called the police and reported that the belt was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the police did their police report, grand theft of this championship belt. And I guess Jericho, he figured, I'm just going to make the most of this.
Oh yeah, well of course. That's I'm sure that's what started the whole thing. Is just like let's turn it into something. Let's turn something bad into something good.
Sure.
Let's use real. And you know what? I used to always hate when wrestling didn't do that. It's like let's use real life and work it into our story.
That was the funniest part about this because he puts this video out and this video goes all over the place and. Like on Twitter, our board, Reddit, like wherever you go, people are just, oh my God, this is so great. Can you believe that they took this and they turned it into something so great? And I was just thinking, that's where wrestling used to be.
Yep.
That is what pro wrestling used to be. There's so many people that watch WWE nowadays.
They don't even understand what pro wrestling is supposed to be.
No, they don't get it anymore.
Oh, completely. I mean, it's so funny because it's like people, they'll see something like that and they'll think it's cheating because you didn't script it.
I lived through that Ohio Valley period where Vince would fuck up Cornette's storylines like on a semi-weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. And Cornette's whole purpose was to try to make sense of everything that had been screwed up by Vince McMahon.
You know what?
It was one thing after another every single week.
You know what, though? I just realized something when you said this. He made it work, and it's one person, and this crew of 30 guys that writes every week.
That's what I said at the beginning of the show.
They can't make it work.
No.
But he did. But no, Vince didn't. But Vince didn't mess with his stuff that much. I mean, he messed with it in certain ways, but it wasn't like tearing it up. Like he didn't even look at what his writing was. He would just pick people at inopportune times and take them away from him, and then
yes, of course. But then Cornette had to figure out. Okay, so something horrible happened. How can I make the most of this? How can I try to make this work? And it was brilliant, the things that he came up with. He actually probably became a much better booker because of it, because he had to think.
He did become a better booker because of it.
Yes.
Yeah. But having said that, years later when he was booking, unfortunately, he did not, he wanted to book for that audience when it was a different audience. Years later, he was trying to, teach that audience how his audience reacted, and that audience was so set in their ways, or I don't even set in their ways. It's just a different audience and different wants. Like he when he was them talking about Ring of Honor, when he had Ring of Honor, they wanted kick-ass Japanese wrestling matches. You know what I mean? That's what they wanted, and Cornette wanted, old school storylines, and it was just a bad mix. That, Cornette wanted to do. He wanted to bring to the Carolinas what he did in the Carolinas in 1986, which was great in 1986. But these guys wanted work rate. And Cornette, is, from that era where, hey, the Midnight Express, one of the greatest working tag teams I've ever seen, but that was only a small part of it. It wasn't the be all and end all. And now, it's just so much more important. And the other thing was just he would want to bring in, he was always, wanting guys who looked a certain way and all that, which unfortunately in the indie scene, there's not a lot of those guys. And the funny thing is, like, I keep thinking about it, like, he wanted to bring in and push Ciampa, and they were so against it. And now look at Ciampa, you know what I mean? Because remember, they were also against that guy just 'cause he's got a good body. And now freaking Ciampa's like, was such a great heel. But I mean, and granted, he wasn't great then, but I guess you could say that there was an eye for talent there, because look at what he became. I mean, to me, that's one of the jobs of a great booker and a great recruiter and all that, is the ability to find a guy who isn't very good and see something in them. And then 3-4 years later, you're rewarded with Ciampa, this guy who, is freaking great. So in that sense, and a lot of times, and this is going to happen with AEW, and they got to steer the course sometimes. There may be guys, and I don't think Evil Uno's the guy, but there may be guys that initially, like Dwayne Johnson, don't get over, but and the fans are going to complain because the fans want to run everything, and just go, he's not over, quit using him, he's not over, or, whatever it is. They don't want this personality. And if you think that they're wrong, you just got to just go, like, you can't let them dictate to you if you think you're right, but then they get mad because they're not running it. So it's just really unique. It's like the most fun time to be a wrestling fan, because there's so many little subplots going on, including, the fight between the producers and their audience, and the funny part is that the wrestlers are working harder than ever before. And trying, this is not a crew of wrestlers who are thinking, let's con these guys out of money and then just like go easy and laugh after the match that these people are so dumb. I mean, they got to work so hard for this audience, and they do. And you're getting such an incredible product because of it.
So anyway, to conclude the story, the police then reported that somebody anonymously came in with the belt and said they found it on the side of the road, and so it's been recovered. And that's the story.
They found it on the side of the road. That is so weird.
Oh, yeah. It's a very strange story.
Well,
I thought it was funny because there were people yesterday, I think it was yesterday, that thought that it had to be a storyline.
Oh, shit, I did, because I didn't investigate it. I was so busy writing, and then I just saw, I saw Jericho's promo, and it's like, that's a pretty clever promo. Great storyline.
Yeah. But when you actually saw, because the initial story in the police report, it was like, dude, if you're going to do an angle, I hope you got a better one than that.
No. You cannot.
That's worse than the Rowan story.
You cannot do a fake police report because you'll get busted on that. That's
not just that, but like your storyline is that the limo driver went back to the airport to drop off someone else's luggage and he came back and the belt was gone. That's like, they'd have to come up with a better story than that if you're doing a storyline.
Yeah, but you know what? It's too bad that the police ruined the angle, because the police, like, as soon as they found the belt, they went and put it all over social media. I mean, if I would have, tried to do something where let's pretend it's gone and let's have it like,
who stole it?
Who stole it for weeks, and then have some new guy come into the territory, or MJF, or God
Moxley.
Moxley. Actually, it fits Moxley really well because he's going to be gone for a while. Although he's going to be back first TV. But Moxley, the idea that Moxley shows up and you build up Jericho and Moxley. He stole the belt on the side of the road, and he like pretended to be the limo driver or something.
Yeah,
I think that's awesome, especially because of how strong the angle started. Yeah, you could have done that, but it's like they ruined. I mean,
quite frankly, you could still go with that because we don't know who this limo driver was. I mean, at the end of the day, it could turn out that Moxley was a limo driver and he tossed his $30,000 belt out the window.
Yeah, but it means nothing now because Jericho's got it back. I mean, like, the idea is to make this thing work is that when it's recovered, Jericho doesn't get it back. You give it to the office, and then Jericho's complaining that, and they don't, and the whole storyline is that they don't give him a new belt. You lost your belt. So it's like he has to defend the championship with no belt. And then it comes out that Moxley stole it, from the very beginning. And then, they do that 3-4 weeks in, and it leads to Jericho and Moxley somehow in a humiliation situation. Yeah, that could that's wrestling right there. That's wrestling, but the frickin' Tallahassee police ruined the angle.
And actually, they pulled the tweet, so I'm wondering if AEW was like, pull that tweet down, but it was too late.
But it's too late. He's got the belt.
It's too late.
Yeah.
All right, tell us about Norman Frederick Charles.
Norman Frederick Charles passed away about a week ago. I just found out about it a couple of days ago. So Norman Frederick Charles and Lord Jonathan Boyd. Sir Norman Frederick Charles and Lord Jonathan Boyd were the Royal Kangaroos, who were a tag team in the 70s. And, they were really big in Oregon and Washington, for Don Owen. From 71 to 76, they started the team. They had teamed in Australia, but never as not as the Royal Kangaroos. So Jonathan Boyd, or John Boyle is his real name, but Jonathan Boyd came to the United States, and some people will know Jonathan Boyd later as part of the Sheepherders, but he came to the United States, and, and then Norman came to the United States a little later. They met up in working for Bill Watts, but they weren't a tag team then, and then Boyd went to Oregon, and, Boyd was a great talker, and he was a very good worker. And, and they didn't, he was short, and, Bill Watts didn't, although it was junior heavyweight territory, but I didn't see any, he didn't work with Danny Hodge or anything like that. They just didn't do anything with Boyd or Norman. Boyd goes to Portland, immediately gets over because he's a good talker and a good worker, and, being short, just, they had Mad Dog Vachon there, and they had Tony Bourne there, and those were short guys. So being short wasn't like a problem in Portland if you could work and talk. And so he got over, and foreigners always, could get over his heels anyway, especially, he was a Australian foreigner running down the United States. You had all these, baby faces. Anyway, Boyd gets over really big. And he calls his buddy Charles, come up here. So they come up, they become the Royal Kangaroos, they become the dominant tag team in the territory on 2 different runs. They went all over, did well everywhere. They were a very good team. Held the World Tag Team titles in San Francisco, when I saw them a lot. Although it wasn't a long period of time, but they... I remember when they were together, my friends would recite their interviews because Boyd was such a good interview, and Norman would just be like this maniac. And the maniac kind of guys always got over, the kind of, insane, crazy guys. Boyd would do this interview and Norman would just be out there frothing at the mouth, making no sense. But it was a great contrast. But in the ring, they had a lot of good double team moves, more than most of the teams at the time. And, very strong team. And then, essentially, I think they got sick of each other and they broke up. And I don't think either of them were ever as successful. But Norman, went other places. It was actually in Stampede Wrestling where they broke up. And Boyd went back to Oregon and had another good run there as a single. And then Norman stayed in Stampede Wrestling. This is late 70s now. And Norman was the British Commonwealth Junior Heavyweight Champion. So he was the veteran who helped Dynamite Kid and Bret Hart when they were just starting out. And they worked with him all the time. So he, Bret Hart will tell you. Norman taught him how to blade. I don't know what else he'd say about him because I haven't asked him about Norman. Actually, I'll probably do that tonight. But they were always working there. And then, he went to England as Wild Red Berry, which is a funny name because it's the name of the original manager of the original Kangaroos. So he went to England and he worked with Daddy and Haystacks and all those guys. He managed Kamala when he was Big Jim Harris. And then, pretty much worked a little bit more in the United States. Was actually managed by Jim Cornette at one point. And then retired from wrestling in 1983. By that point, he was, 83. He was 78 when he passed away. So 83 is 36 years ago. So that makes him 42. Retired, got a regular job, and had a apparently a very nice life. But he passed away due to cancer last week in Florida, where he's been living since pretty much shortly after he retired. He took a job working in Florida and just worked there, retired from the job at one point many years ago. And, just that was him. But yeah, good crazy guy. Good. I mean, I remember good worker, but, nothing like on his own. I mean, I guess he did, I never thought he would be a guy. And then when he was in Georgia on his own, it was kind of like, I mean, he really needed Boyd, he was a great partner with Boyd, but Boyd was very much the star of the team, and he was the sidekick.
All right, so we got to talk about the CMLL anniversary show, and then I've got a question. We got time for one mailbag question today.
Mm-hmm. So CMLL anniversary show will be on the 27th, and we've got the first Mask versus Mask Micros match with Micro Man against Shamuel, if I pronounce that right. And then there's going to be a cage match with a bunch of guys in there. And the last guy left in the cage gets his head shaved. Let me get the names. It's I know it's Ultimo Guerrero and Cybernetico, Cyber the main man, and Negro Casas is in there, and Volador is in there, and let me see who else. Gilbert, El Barrico, Ricky Banderas, Cavernario, Big Daddy, who's not the same Big Daddy that was in England. And those are the guys. So I was going to go to the CML anniversary show, and I'm going to go to Battle of Los Angeles instead. But I think so. My Arena Mexico trip now, I'm going to try to go in March of next year. That's my plan now, or just sometime, maybe in the summer. Maybe like I could take my kids in the summer to Mexico, because they'll have big summer shows, because it really doesn't have to be the anniversary show. But I'd like all year, just wanted like an anniversary show. I wanted to see an Atlantis Ultimo Guerrero match, like that match that they had all those years ago that was like so awesome. And, or like the Rush La Parka match. It's never going to happen. That would have been so awesome to see, Rush get his head shaved, but it was not to be, because Park he just can't lose that mask. He just can't until he retires. But that would have been the most awesome. That would have been the most awesome, because those guys have so much chemistry. That'd been like great, but it didn't happen.
Alrighty, so the mailbag question here. Shane Douglas. Did the NWA know Shane Douglas was going to throw down the championship beforehand? Was it a work or a shoot?
Wow.
Where to begin?
What a story. So almost nobody knew. I have heard a story, and I don't think it's true, but I did hear a story that there's a guy named John Clark who's a sportscaster, who at the time did a newsletter, and I was friends with him, and he never told me the story. And Dennis Carluzzo, who was the head of the NWA, who eventually was the guy who made the call, I was friends with him too, and he never told me that he knew either. And the worst part is that I knew, but I couldn't tell anyone, and it was such a weird situation. So anyway, I couldn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone. But, I don't believe, because I talked to Dennis afterwards. I talked to Dennis before, during. Dennis was wondering, should he do it or not? It was a big thing. Dennis wanted Chris Benoit to win.
Well, tell everyone what happened.
Well, Paul conspired Paul worked with the NWA, and they wanted to crown a new world champion. And Paul, let's do it on my show. We'll, ECW's got local TV. It kind of had a cult thing. Dennis Carluzzo was like was promoting NWA, and him and Paul had always had problems. But Paul was like, let's work together, or maybe, I don't even think it actually wasn't even Paul. I think it might have been Howard Brody, or somebody. I think it was Howard Brody. I think Dennis didn't want to work with him because he didn't trust him. And Howard Brody was like, you got to work with him. I'm pretty sure that's how it went down. And he didn't want to, and he didn't trust Paul. Nor should he have. And so they were having a thing, so they were going to do this tournament. And Dennis wanted Chris Benoit to win, and Paul was insistent. Okay, we can have Shane Douglas will win. But, okay, but Dennis, I just want Shane Douglas to win. But then he'll drop the title to Chris Benoit. So you'll get your thing, but we need to establish first Shane Douglas as the champion. So Dennis was like, I want Chris Benoit to win, because Chris Benoit was Dennis's guy. Although Chris Benoit later jumped from Dennis to Paul pretty quickly after this happened. But Dennis's top guy that he was pushing the most was Chris Benoit. So they had their thing, and it went down to, at the end, I guess Dennis said, okay, Shane can win, and then he'll lose to Chris Benoit, some date down the line. So they go in there, and they have the tournament, and I don't remember how Chris Benoit got eliminated, but it came down to, they made sure he wasn't in there at the end because he wasn't their guy. So it was Shane Douglas and I believe Too Cold Scorpio, and Shane Douglas beat him with a belly-to-belly. And then Shane Douglas picks up the NWA belt. And again, the whole idea was that it throw down the NWA belt, and it's like, this is a new era, and it's the year of Extreme, and the first Extreme Championship Wrestling World Champion, right there on that show. So basically, toss the NWA belt in the garbage can. Not quite, but figuratively they did. And that led to the creation of the ECW World Championship. And by the way, so the creation of the ECW World Championship and all this, in something that is the most tired thing, because it's just so frustrating that I feel like I've talked to many walls this week, but many, many people weren't walls as well, but many people were. But, it's like the first match, has to go on last. Jericho and Page have to go on last. And it's like, I go, why? And there's no reason other than he's got to go on last, because if not, it's like demeaning the championship. And it's like, no, demeaning the championship is having a flat championship match. But Paul, this match did not go on last. The first ECW championship match, booked by Paul Heyman, went second to last because he thought that they were going to do a match, and I think it was Public Enemy against Cactus Jack and Mikey Whipwreck, where they were going to brawl all over the place and have a kick-ass match, and he knew that a technical wrestling match following that would go flat, and he was trying to establish a new world championship, and he did not want it to be established in a flat match, so he knew what he had to do, and that's what he did. And it made no difference if it had gone on last or not last, other than if it had gone on last, it would have been, people might have gone, that first ECW match didn't even get over. And nobody said that because it did get over. So anyway, that's another story for another day, but that was the story. And then even after Dennis, they did promos with Dennis, on their ECW TV, acting all confused, because he was. And, he was and then, they were, and the funny thing is Howard Brody still wanted to work with Paul afterwards, after all this, because it's like, well, it's wrestling and this and that. But Paul, at that point, he didn't want nothing to do with the NWA, because Paul had his own, he had their world championship, so to speak, and created his own world championship from it. So he had a legitimate, because NWA name, even though it was past the heyday of the NWA, it wasn't so far past the heyday. The NWA name was used for the real world championship through 1991, and this is 1993, I think. I think it was 93, might have been 94. But it was not that many years. And that name, it was not far removed. It's like the NWA, that's kind of like the legitimate real deal. That's the real initials, the one that dates to Harley Race and Ric Flair and Terry Funk and Hart, and Dory Funk Jr. and Dusty and everybody. So it's kind of like it's that belt. And then he took the lineage of that belt and then created his own belt with it. So it was like legitimized in its own weird way, in the weirdness of how legitimate pro wrestling was thought of. You know, those world titles were supposed to have, if you just created your own world title out of nothing, it's like a fake belt. But if you can weave it into a storyline that makes it real, that's why, you know, like when the Bruiser created his world title, you know, it's like, you know, he used, you know, a disputed finish in a match in Los Angeles when he was the champion, and then went back home to Indianapolis. You know, he had lost the title, but didn't really, and used that to declare himself world champion in Indianapolis and used that WWE belt and WWE name forever. And, you know, the original WWE belt, you know, stemmed from the Carpentier-Luthez match, where Carpentier beat Luthez, but, you know, it was a weird finish, and they were going to do two champions, and all kinds of things happened. But Carpentier went to Omaha and created that belt there, losing to Vern Gagne, and then he went to Los Angeles as world champion there, and that's where the original WWE belt, you know, they actually had, like when they created these new world champions in these major markets, you know, you couldn't just go create it. Like even with Buddy Rogers with the WWF Championship, they created the story that even though he lost the NWA title to Luthez, that, you know, it was a one fall match, not 2 out of 3. So, you know, that's why, you know, we still recognize Buddy as world champion. You know, so and that's, you know, Paul wanted that, you know, weird credibility and of the NWA title and winning the NWA title tournament. And then it was his ECW championship that he used for the rest of the ECW promotion until it folded.
All right, everybody. On that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. As noted, the new Observer is going to be out tomorrow, so you can look forward to that. We got a lot of great stuff up on the front page, lots of great shows, and so much more. So check it out. And that is it. We will talk to you again after a while.